When the greatest of the Astartes are crippled in combat, the Battle Brother's body is repaired and transferred into an armored cyborganic sarcophagus, outfitted with extensive life support systems. The pilot himself survives only as a tightly curled and shriveled organic component deep inside the Dreadnought, which is at once his reborn body and his tomb. The sarcophagus is sealed and filled with amniotic fluid, cold and thick as oil, that fills the lungs as the warrior breathes. Stabbing input cords connect them to the machine. They must focus on controlling the Dreadnought, lest their mind returns to the natural state of awareness, centering on their butchered and crippled physical body. Every sense is replaced. Eyes become Auspex scanners. Sound arrives through acoustic sensors. Touch is pressure readings on armor plating. The pilot sees the battlefield through machine optics and speaks through a synthesized, crackling voice that carries a faint echo of the man he once was. Their nerves burn. Their old wounds ache. Their existence is torture. Often all that remains of the Space Marine is the desire to fight and a rage that cannot be quenched. The Imperium calls this an honor. The greatest honor a Space Marine can receive. To serve beyond death. To continue when the body has been destroyed beyond all repair. To be reborn as something no longer entirely human and no longer entirely machine. Once interred within the Dreadnought, the Marine cannot leave the metal womb and is destined for a life of endless battle until destroyed. Not all of them maintain their minds through the centuries. Each awakening brings faded memories, eroding personality, and the slow realization that everyone you knew is dust. Some go feral. Some fight wars in their sleep that ended 1,000 years ago. Some are kept in stasis for decades between battles, their dreamless suspension broken only when the chapter has no other choice. One of them has been awake and asleep, and awake again, for over 10,000 years. His name is Bjorn the Fell-Handed, the man before the machine. Bjorn the Fell-Handed, also known as the eldest, true-claw, revered one. And last, from the company of Russ, is a Venerable Dreadnought and former Great Wolf of the Space Wolves chapter. In his mortal life, he fought beside the Emperor and his Primarch Leman Russ during the Great Crusade and the bitter wars of the Horus Heresy. He was not a gentle warrior, even before the machine. Notably sullen and quick to irritation, a space wolf of the Tra, the third great company. He was not celebrated for warmth or wisdom in his youth. He was celebrated for killing. He fought across dozens of worlds during the Great Crusade, and when the Horus Heresy began, he was there for the worst of it. At the Burning of Prospero, Bjorn encountered a demon that had taken the form of War Master Horus inside a structure built by the Thousand Suns. The sorcery failed against Bjorn because the demon did not know his true name. Bjorn kept fighting, driving it back, until the foul being grabbed his arm and sent a massive surge of warp energy through it. His hand immediately started to smolder and decay, and the corruption began to crawl up his arm. Yet Bjorn grimly fought on. His life was saved only when Caspar Horsa severed the arm at the elbow before the warp could claim the rest of him. He lost the hand. He kept the name it gave him. Bjorn was initially deeply bitter about his missing arm and insisted on calling himself Bjorn the One-Handed. The warriors around him called him Fell-Handed, regardless. In time, as with all things that endure long enough, the name became legend, the last of the company of Russ. When the Horus Heresy ended, Bjorn was among the survivors who rebuilt. He had earned the complete trust of Primarch Leman Russ, and Russ elevated him to his personal retinue in the aftermath of the heresy. He was part of the Wolf King's innermost circle. Then Russ left. He gathered a small group of his greatest warriors and departed for the Eye of Terror, telling Bjorn to wait for his return. Bjorn believed that Russ had left him behind with the foreknowledge that Bjorn would survive as a dreadnought and that his incomparably cold anger would keep him not only alive in battle, but sane of mind, and therefore able to guard over the Space Wolves throughout the generations. Russ never came back. Bjorn was the only member of Leman Russ's personal wolf guard left behind, and he still harbors intense feelings of rejection and bitterness when he tells of this day. He does not speak of it easily. When the Space Wolves ask him about Russ, which they always do, he speaks carefully and economically. He tells them what they need to know. He does not tell them everything he feels about it. After Russ disappeared, Bjorn assumed command of the chapter. He became the Space Wolves' first Great Wolf, the first chapter master after the Primarch. He led the Space Wolves until 934.M31, when during the Proxima Rebellion he sustained terrible injuries beyond the aid of the chapter's apothecaries, and was interred into a dreadnought. He had been a warrior in flesh for the entirety of the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy and the long years after. Now the flesh was gone. What remained was iron and cold amniotic fluid, and 10,000 years still to come. Inside the machine, the dreadnought chassis Bjorn inhabits is one of the most technologically advanced sarcophagi in existence, possessing abilities considered rare even during the Horus Heresy, touted for its ornamentation, which Bjorn despised. The chassis gave him faster movement, reaction times, and sensory input than one would expect from such a brutal-looking construction. This allowed Bjorn to fight, as he always did, upon instinct. His primary weapon is the True Claw, a dreadnought-sized wolf claw crafted by the chapter's tech marines in homage to the weapon he favored in his mortal life. An ancient relic of the Space Wolves chapter, its underslung heavy flamer has burned enemies of the Imperium for 10,000 years. Armed with a plasma cannon in his early centuries as a dreadnought, Bjorn was reckoned to have a personal kill count higher than that of some entire chapters. Between battles, Bjorn is kept in stasis and is only awakened once every 1,000 Terran years, or whenever his chapter has need of his skills and wisdom. He is also awakened at the dawn of each new century to hold court at the Great Feast, where he recounts elements from his own saga to his battle brothers. Every Space Wolf in the chapter, from the Great Wolf down to the youngest Bloodclaw, gathers in silence to hear him speak. He is the living memory of what the chapter was, what the Primarch was, and what the Imperium looked like before 10,000 years of grinding war had ground it into something barely recognizable. The confrontation with Magnus in 444 M41, the daemon-primarch Magnus the Red lead, a massive demonic incursion against Fenris itself. The Space Wolves faced an assault of warp entities and demonic forces attacking their home world directly. Bjorn was awakened from stasis to face it. Magnus himself came to Fenris, the Crimson King, Primarch of the Thousand Suns, a being of near-infinite psychic power. He went to the dreadnought directly. Magnus recognized Bjorn. He had been at Prospero. He knew what this machine contained. He reached for the dreadnought chassis and tore into it with the force of a Primarch's full strength, bending the reinforced armor, driving Bjorn to the edge of a cliff. Bjorn's voice transmitter was destroyed. He could not speak. He could feel systems shutting down across his body. Magnus held him at the cliff edge, the dreadnought half suspended over the drop, and looked at the ancient machine. Then Magnus pulled him back from the edge. He did not destroy him. Even a traitor Primarch would not end the last man who remembered the age of heroes. What 10,000 years costs. Bjorn admits that the loneliness cuts deeper than any blade. He has watched every warrior he knew in the flesh turn to dust. He has been awake for battles and asleep for centuries, and awake again for more battles. And the faces around him are always new. The chapter calls him the eldest and the revered one, and they mean every word of it. And he understands that their reverence is genuine. And he also understands that reverence is not the same as kinship. The men who knew him as a man are gone. They have been gone for thousands of years. The Primarch, who was his liege, is gone, vanished into the eye of terror, without explanation, without goodbye, without the courtesy of telling Bjorn what the departure meant or when it might end. Some dreadnoughts are so ancient their memories extend back to the founding of their chapter and its earliest history. For this reason, they are revered not just as powerful warriors, but as ageless forebears and living embodiments of battles fought long ago. Bjorn is all of this. He is also a warrior who has been fighting the same war for over 10,000 years, with no end in sight and no peers left alive who remember what the beginning looked like, to preserve what little remains of their sanity. Most Space Marine dreadnoughts are kept asleep in the long years between engagements, though often their sleep is disrupted by terrible dreams. Bjorn does not discuss his dreams, why chapters fight to recover them. If a dreadnought is destroyed, the Space Marines will fight to retrieve the armored shell so that the occupant can be returned to the chapters. Mausoleum for his long-deserved final rest. The final rest matters. The warrior inside has earned it. He has given everything a Space Marine can give, has given it repeatedly across centuries, has watched the galaxy change around him while he remained locked inside a machine built from his own broken body. When a dreadnought falls in battle, the chapter does not abandon it. They go back for it through whatever enemy fire stands between them and the wreck. Because inside that armor is a man who gave up the last thing he had, which was the right to stop fighting. And the least his brothers can do is bring him home. The eldest, Bjorn the Fell-Handed, has fought in the Great Crusade. He has fought through the Horus Heresy. He has fought through the Age of Apostasy, the War of the Beast, the First and Second Wars for Armageddon, and 10,000 years of smaller wars, whose names are known only to him and to the records in the Fang on Fenris. He saw the Emperor before the Golden Throne. He stood in Leman Russ's personal retinue. He was the first chapter master of the Space Wolves. He lost his hand to a demon, his body to the machine, and his Primarch to the Eye of Terror. He sleeps in his sarcophagus in the Fang, maintained by tech marines who anoint his chassis with sacred oils and speak prayers over the machine that holds what is left of him. Once a century, he wakes and tells the young warriors what the old age was like, and they listen in absolute silence, because he is the only being alive who was there. And when he is gone, the living memory of that age goes with him. He is not gone yet. He has fought within a dreadnaught's sarcophagus for millennia. The Space Wolves revere Bjorn as a living link to their deepest past, waking him only in times of dire need, and he still fights as furiously as he did at Russ' side. The machine awakens. The ice around the sarcophagus cracks. The true claw unfolds. The synthesized voice fills the chamber. 10,000 years, and the Fell-Handed has not stopped.